underneath the thing.
I don't care because
Yes.
we've had it for 6 years and we haven't ran it yet.
And that is good. See?
We have to leave.
So let's see how they make out by the end of the day.
In the brutal world of Yukon gold mining, Tony Beets is the undisputed king. His empire was built on brute force and a reputation louder than his machinery. But the biggest threat to his throne wasn't a rival miner or a bad season, it was his own son, Kevin Beets. This is the story of how Kevin orchestrated the single most audacious play in Klondike history, pulling a $45 million gold treasure right out from under his father's nose. You won't believe he found the key to this fortune in a place Tony had already searched and dismissed as worthless junk. A son's secret army. Gold mining isn't just about big machines and moving dirt, it's about secrets, gambles, and rivalries that can build or break a family empire.
We really want to do something different than Tony. We don't want to be as chaotic. We want to do it once and do it right and just be done with it. So.
And what happened in the Yukon was the single boldest move ever made in the Klondike. Kevin Beets, who for years was overshadowed by his father's larger-than-life presence, was about to pull off the unthinkable, outsmarting Tony Beets and swiping millions in gold from right under his nose. It's funny when you think about it. The whole thing started with papers most people would have used to start a fire. We're talking forgotten geological reports from decades ago, smeared with dust and coffee stains, just left to rot in an old filing cabinet. Tony Beets himself had looked at them years back and dismissed them as junk science not worth the diesel. But Kevin, unlike his dad, saw something more. The reports talked about weird anomalies, tiny magnetic shifts in the ground that hinted at something deep. Buried way below the glacial rock, invisible to the naked eye, could be a jackpot Tony had completely missed. A single excavator can burn through over 100 gallons of diesel a day, costing thousands, so chasing a ghost on junk science was a risk Tony would never take. But Kevin didn't go and announce his idea. He knew better than to challenge his father head-on. Instead, he framed it as a quiet little experiment, a side project that was harmless and, more importantly, unthreatening. But behind that calm mask, Kevin's ambition was burning hot. He quietly started building his own strike team. These were trusted workers who had grown tired of Tony's iron-fisted way of doing things, guys who wanted a chance to prove themselves outside the shadow of the Beets empire. Together, this secret crew would risk everything. Kevin wasn't just chasing gold. He was chasing his own legacy. His future, his pride, and his very name depended on whether this secret gamble paid off. Whispers started almost right away. The Beets camp is like a small town. It's a family, sure, but it's also an empire, and empires run on gossip. Workers started muttering in the mess hall. Kevin was breaking the rules. Kevin was wasting fuel. Kevin was setting himself up for a massive failure. Tony, louder than a rock truck and bigger than life, wasted no time making fun of his son in front of the entire crew. He called him a dreamer without guts, a boy still playing in the minor leagues. The laughter from the crew stung, but Kevin didn't even flinch. He just watched, listened, and made a silent promise to himself. He would beat Tony not with force, but with brains. The camp started to split. Some of the old-timers, men who had mined with Tony for years, stayed loyal to the king of the Klondike. But others, quietly and carefully, started to drift over to Kevin's side. They were drawn to the calm, calculating fire they saw in his eyes. A dynasty that had stood together for decades was turning into a powder keg, and all it needed was a single spark to blow. That spark came from a map, old, stained with torn edges and faded lines. Kevin found it buried under a pile of old records. At first glance, it looked like trash.
It'd be always good to have Kevin back. I mean, it's a family operation. So that little had a nice summer so far, so hopefully he's over that part and sticks around for a while, we'll see.
But then he saw it. Strange bends in the small creeks marked with tiny, almost invisible symbols. To anyone else, they were just random scratches. To Kevin, they were coordinates. He took the map and laid it next to modern LiDAR scans, laser images of the land. And suddenly the truth jumped out. Hidden bedrock traps, the kind that naturally catch heavy gold, had been sitting untouched for decades, invisible to heavy machines. Journals from long-gone miners confirmed the theory, talking about gold that sinks deeper than tools can reach, as if the earth itself was guarding its treasure. Kevin's pulse started hammering. For years, Tony had mined all around this area, convinced it was empty. But Tony had been dead wrong. Beneath his feet lay one of the richest jackpots in Yukon history, just waiting for someone smart enough to see it. Kevin rolled the map up tight and tucked it away. No one else could know. Not yet. The key was found, but unlocking the treasure required a secret war. One step ahead of a legend. That very night he acted. Plans that were drawn up in secret came to life under the pale Yukon moonlight. In the shadows, Kevin Beets started moving pieces on the board. While the main camp slept, his loyal strike team moved equipment across the frozen ground like ghosts. Engines were started in short bursts, their roar quieted by custom-made mufflers that made massive excavators hum like generators. Get this, they even moved sluice boxes one piece at a time, hiding them under piles of scrap wood so they wouldn't be seen. By day, they used camouflage screens made of lumber and tarps to hide the whole operation, making it blend into the tree line. Kevin's men knew that one mistake, one loud noise, one flash of light, and Tony would come storming in and shut them down before they found a single ounce of gold. But instead of fear, the secrecy gave them a sense of purpose. Every shovel of dirt wasn't just work, it was an act of defiance, a quiet rebellion against the king himself. The biggest problem was fuel. Tony watched his diesel supply like a hawk. Every single drop was accounted for. So Kevin got clever. He rerouted fuel deliveries with careful precision, logging the fuel slips as maintenance orders under Tony's own name. Trucks would show up at odd hours, filled to the brim, and then vanish into the night. To anyone checking the books, it just looked like Tony's own machines were guzzling extra fuel, not Kevin's secret fleet running under the cover of darkness. The risk was insane, but the deeper they went, the more the operation felt less like mining and more like a spy movie. Tony, however, wasn't a fool. The empire he built taught him to smell when something was off, and it wasn't long before he caught a whiff. Fuel reports weren't adding up. Barrels were emptying way too fast. At first, Tony figured it was just sloppy paperwork, but when he started questioning workers, their eyes darted away and their excuses were weak. Somebody's wasting my diesel.
It'd be always good to have Kevin back. I mean, it's a family operation. So that little had a nice summer so far, so hopefully he's over that part and sticks around for a while, we'll see.
He growled, his voice booming across the camp. Tony's suspicion quickly turned into action. He sent drones up into the sky, their buzzing wings scanning the dark valleys for any sign of unauthorized digging. He started showing up unannounced at all hours, stomping through the mud with his headlamp blazing. One worker swore Tony showed up at 2 in the morning just to check the oil on 3 bulldozers, hoping to catch someone off guard. When that didn't work, he started doing surprise patrols, barging into the areas where Kevin's crew worked during the day. Kevin totally expected this. He knew his father too well. Decoy trucks became his secret weapon. He'd send empty rigs rattling down muddy trails, headlights on, just to draw Tony's attention in the wrong direction. Meanwhile, the real work continued somewhere else, quiet and hidden. It wasn't a mining job anymore. It had become a chess match. Tony moved his pieces, spies and drones, while Kevin countered with illusions and decoys. The deception was working, but the ground itself was about to reveal the truth. Hiding $1 million secret. Then one night, the sluice boxes roared to life. What had been just a theory, a huge risk, and a bunch of whispered plans suddenly turned into shimmering golden reality. As the first run of pay dirt churned through Kevin's hidden machines, the crew went silent. Under the dim glow of lanterns, thick streaks of yellow gold flashed under the mats. It was heavier, richer, and brighter than any of them had ever dared to imagine. A hush fell over the men as the concentrate trays filled up, nugget after nugget piling up against the black sand, sparkling like trapped stars. When it came time for the weigh-in, even Kevin's steady hands were trembling. Nearly $2 million worth of gold, nuggets, flakes, and dust gleamed back at them from the scale. It was a richer haul than Tony's best recent runs. The thing is, gold is incredibly dense. A 5-gallon bucket of pure gold dust would weigh almost 400 pounds. The crew almost exploded with cheers, but Kevin's voice cut through the noise like a knife. Silence! Not a word leaves this place. He knew the danger. One whisper, one brag over morning coffee, and Tony would be on them like a storm. The gold was carefully sealed in steel crates welded shut and then buried beneath stacks of old unused equipment where not even Tony's sharp eyes would think to look. The next morning, the workers walked back to the main camp with straight faces, pretending they were just tired from a normal shift, all while the image of glittering gold was burned into their minds. But triumph always comes with a shadow. Every ounce they pulled from the hidden cut carried a risk. Trucks had to move, leaving tracks in the Yukon mud that are as good as fingerprints. And that test came sooner than anyone expected. A loaded truck hauling pay dirt from the secret cut almost slammed head-on into Tony's convoy. Both drivers slammed on the brakes, their headlights cutting through the dark. For a few seconds that felt like an eternity, the two crews just stared at each other. If Tony had followed those tracks back, the whole operation would have been exposed. Kevin's men scrambled in the dark, erasing the tracks with shovels, desperately trying to cover their mistake. Hours later, disaster almost struck again. A water hose burst, sending a geyser of sludge right toward the patrol route Tony was on that night. Kevin and his men dove into the muck, scooping it back with their bare hands just moments before Tony's flashlight beam swept across the valley. The light paused on the very patch of ground they had just disguised. One more second, one closer look, and it would have all been over. But then the beam moved on and Tony disappeared into the night. The next day was even worse. Tony's own excavator started digging alarmingly close to Kevin's secret gold vein. Kevin had no choice but to shut everything down. The machines fell silent as the crew hid in the shadows, holding their breath as the king of the Klondike prowled nearby. They were one mistake away from losing it all, but the biggest mistake came from Tony himself. The Yukon was quiet, but only on the surface. When Tony Beets finally found the hidden sector, it was too late. All that remained was scarred earth, the ghost of a strike so massive it could have rewritten his family's fortune. He stared into the silence and knew Kevin hadn't just mined dirt, he had mined his father's pride. With a guttural roar, Tony ripped his hard hat off and hurled it to the ground. "He played me like a rookie," he bellowed, his voice echoing in the empty valley. For the first time, the king of the Klondike looked beaten. Miles away, Kevin gathered his crew. Steel crates were pried open, revealing a fortune that seemed unreal. The final tally was confirmed, over $45 million carved from land Tony called worthless. Holding up a nugget the size of his fist, Kevin's voice was steady. "This isn't about gold," he said, "it's about proving we can lead without fear." His men roared, their loyalty now bound to the new king who had just crowned himself. By dawn, the news spread like wildfire. Kevin outsmarted Tony, they whispered in bars across the Klondike. Rival miners just smirked. It makes you wonder, was this just dumb luck? The thing is, this wasn't an overnight win, it was years of observation followed by one moment of incredible courage. The dynasty wasn't broken, it was transformed. Kevin was no longer the son, he was the rival. And as the sun rose, its light revealed a new dawn in the Yukon. Was this a brilliant move for independence or the ultimate family betrayal? Let us know what you think in the comments. For more high-stakes gold rivalries, smash that subscribe for more.